Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, and this is how everything I thought was safe and solid cracked in under 90 seconds. There was music playing from the kitchen speaker, something jazzy, chaotic, and the garlic was burning. Again. I was on my knees under the sink trying to unclog the drain because I dropped the damn ring, the actual wedding ring, when she walked in wearing heels that made that unmistakable click, click, click across the hardwood. I didn't look up. I just shouted, "Careful! The pipe's leaking again." Silence. I stuck my head out from under the cabinet and she was standing there with her coat on, clutch in hand. Lipstick I hadn't seen in 4 years. Perfume I forgot existed. Her fingers tapping the side of her thigh like she was waiting for a train. "I'm heading out," she said. "That's all." "No, I love you." "No, I'll be back." "Just out." Still crouched by the sink like some water-drenched plumber version of my pathetic self, I said the first thing that hit the roof of my mouth without passing through my brain. "If you go out tonight, don't come back." She blinked, smiled. Not the kind that melts hearts. The kind that makes your spine feel like it's folding in on itself. "No problem," she whispered. She didn't even close the door behind her. Just walked out, like she already knew she wouldn't need to open it again. The garlic burned. The sink dripped. My knees were wet and shaking. I stared at the small puddle under the cabinet and realized I couldn't tell if it was water or me. I stood up, slowly, like I was learning how to walk again. My reflection in the kitchen window looked older than it had this morning. I told myself to breathe, and then I did what no one in my situation should do. I opened her laptop. Not because I was looking for anything. More because my hands didn't know what else to do. I just clicked, and there it was. An open tab. Conversation. A list of hotel bookings. My name wasn't on any of them. One message. From someone saved in her contacts as L. It read, "Tell him tonight. Then we're free." And that was the moment I realized something I had never, ever considered. She wasn't cheating. She was leaving. And not just me. She was leaving everything. The house felt louder without her in it. Not because of noise, but because of the absence of it. I walked from room to room, listening to the hum of appliances, the tick of the wall clock, and the distant sound of someone else's laughter echoing through the open kitchen window. It wasn't hers. That was already gone. I sat down at the table with the garlic still smoldering in the pan beside me. The burnt scent clung to everything. The curtains, the cushions, my skin. I pushed the pan off the stove in frustration, and it clattered to the floor, sending up a sharp crack that somehow sounded like punctuation. Her laptop was still open, glowing on the couch like an exposed nerve. I shouldn't have looked again, but I did. The browser tab she'd left open wasn't just a conversation. It was a trail. She'd been planning this for months. There were PDF confirmations, train schedules, a packing checklist titled, "For Good." She wasn't meeting a lover for the night. She was relocating her entire life, starting tonight, and I wasn't even a footnote. One document stood out. A digital receipt for a storage unit registered in her maiden name. I clicked it. The unit was paid 6 months in advance. She'd been moving her belongings out piece by piece. No wonder my favorite mug vanished. No wonder I couldn't find the framed photo from our trip to Savannah last spring. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't betrayal. It was extraction. I walked to the bedroom. Her closet looked full at a glance, but most of it was fluff. Clothes she never wore, sweaters with tags, shoes she'd once said hurt her feet. The good stuff? Gone. I opened the nightstand drawer on her side. Empty. Not even a receipt or an old charger. That's when the panic kicked in. I grabbed my phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. So I did what no emotionally sane person should do. I drove. Fast. Sloppy. Heart racing. Toward the hotel from the booking confirmation. It wasn't far. She wasn't hiding. She just didn't think I'd come. When I pulled up to the lot, I didn't even park properly. I left the car crooked, engine running, door open. I ran into the lobby like a man possessed. And there she was, at the counter, not in disguise, not guilty, just glowing. She didn't see me at first. She was laughing. With him. A tall man in a gray blazer who placed his hand on the small of her back like it had always been his. She turned slightly, and I saw her mouth move. 3 words. Not to me. To him. It's really over. And somehow, even though it was supposed to break me, I didn't fall apart. I walked back to the car. Sat in silence. Watched them disappear into the elevator. And that's when I realized. She wasn't the only one who had been planning something. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. Sitting in our living room, surrounded by the ghosts of we and us and ours, would have destroyed me more than watching her smile at someone else ever could. So I drove. No destination. Just forward. At a red light, I found myself staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked foreign. Not broken. Just unfamiliar. Like I'd been watching my life happen from the passenger seat and suddenly found myself behind the wheel with no idea how I got there. I pulled into an empty lot near a 24-hour diner and sat in the dark. My phone buzzed. Not a message from her, of course, but an email notification. One I'd forgotten I'd set up. Weeks ago, I created a backup account. Paranoia? Maybe. But part of me had known she was slipping away. And when she started guarding her phone like it contained state secrets, I mirrored her cloud to mine. Just in case. That just in case had just arrived. Attached was an audio file. Timestamped. 43 minutes ago. Played it. It was a recording from her phone. Not a call. Just ambient audio. She must have forgotten to stop the app after hitting record earlier. The sound was muffled at first. Elevator chime. Footsteps. Then voices. Hers and the man from the hotel. You didn't tell him, did you? He said. I didn't have to. He told me not to come back. It's perfect. You sure he won't make things messy? She laughed. It wasn't the kind of laugh you recognize from your wedding day. It was cold. Surgical. Merrick? He folds when the waiter brings the wrong order. He won't do a thing. I paused the audio. The nerve. The absolute confidence in my weakness. That she had studied it, cataloged it, used it as leverage. I'd been rehearsing humility for years while she'd been preparing her exit like a prison break. But here's the thing no one tells you about humiliation. It sharpens you. Not immediately, but slowly, quietly, like a dull knife dragged across stone long enough to carve through steel. So I opened the glove box and pulled out something I hadn't touched since our 3rd anniversary. A little black envelope. Inside it, the key to our safety deposit box, the one she didn't know I had updated. And inside that box, let's just say, I had started gathering things too. Copies, screenshots, a timeline. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story of who I was. The bank lobby was eerily quiet the next morning. All polished marble and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. I hadn't slept. My shirt was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, and my head felt like it was packed with wet cement. But I walked straight up to the clerk and handed over the key like I had rehearsed it in a dream. The box was smaller than I remembered, but heavier. I hadn't opened it since the day I added the envelope. I told myself it was just in case something happened to us. But even back then I knew. Something was already happening. Inside was everything I had been too cowardly to confront. Her deleted texts, printouts of reservation confirmations under her maiden name, a letter I wrote to myself months ago titled, "Read this if she ever leaves." I didn't even remember writing it, but I read it. It said, "If you're reading this, she already made her decision. Now make yours." I stared at those words like they were written by a stranger. Back then, I was still hoping love could fix it. Now I knew better, but that wasn't all I found in the box. There was a second envelope. Not mine. It was cream-colored, heavier, sealed. On the front, in her handwriting, "Do not open unless everything falls apart." My breath caught. I hadn't seen it before. She must have added it, maybe recently, maybe months ago. Did she forget I had access? Or had she left it for me, knowing someday I'd come looking for answers? I hesitated. Then I opened it. Inside were 3 things. A receipt for a wire transfer, a single photograph, and a handwritten note. The photo stopped my heartbeat. It wasn't me and her. It was her, younger, holding hands with a child I didn't recognize. Toddler. At first, I thought maybe it was her nephew or something. But then I saw the birth date scribbled on the back. And did the math. This photo was taken 2 years before we met. The note beside it read, "This is why I can't stay. I've hidden too much. And if you knew everything, you'd never forgive me anyway." That's when it hit me. She hadn't just been running away from me. She was running from her past. And somehow, I had just opened the part of her life she never wanted anyone to see. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours, my mind sprinting in every direction. Who was the child? Where were they now? Was it hers? Was it his? Was it ours somehow from a time before time? Everything felt unstable, like the air around me had thinned. I walked out of the bank with the envelope tucked into my jacket like it was explosive, because it was. Couldn't even drive. I sat behind the wheel for 15 minutes, gripping it like it might explain something to me. Back home, the apartment was painfully ordinary. Our fake eucalyptus still sat on the dining table. Her coffee mug was in the sink. A pair of her sneakers were kicked off at the door like she'd be right back. I stood in the hallway where she last looked at me before walking out, and all I could think was, what else didn't I know about the woman I shared a bed with for 6 years? The wire transfer was the only clue I could act on. I pulled out my laptop and typed the reference number into the bank system. It wasn't just a payment. It was a settlement. A legal transfer to a woman named Christelle Meyer. The name meant nothing to me, but the memo line chilled me. Final support. No contact. Confirmed closure. Support. Not a friend. Not alone. Support. And then I remembered something Arlena said 3 years ago at dinner, a total throwaway comment. We were watching a documentary about women reconnecting with children they gave up for adoption, and she laughed and said, "I'd never do that. Once I let go of something, it stays gone." At the time, I thought she was being edgy. Now, I wasn't so sure. The child in the photo was maybe 3, 4 at most. The photo was dated over a decade ago. If she'd had a kid, hid it, and paid someone off to stay silent, what did that make me? A husband or just the safe chapter after the chaos? The sound of a key turning in the lock startled me. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The door opened slowly, and there she was. Arlena. No makeup. No heels. Hair wet from rain. She looked straight at me and said, "I didn't think you'd find it." I couldn't speak. Not because I was angry or heartbroken, but because I realized she wasn't surprised. She'd come back, expecting this. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't ask how much I'd seen. Arlena just walked in, shook off the rain like a cat, and hung her coat on the same hook it had lived on for years, like the past 48 hours hadn't detonated everything between us. Then, like she'd just come back from grocery shopping, she walked into the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. I stayed frozen in the hallway, holding the envelope in one hand like it might burn a hole through my palm. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. "You had a child." She didn't turn. She sipped the water slowly. "Yes, that's it. Yes." Not even an ounce of apology. No explanation. No justification. I felt my whole chest collapse in on itself. "And you lied about it? Hid it? Paid someone off to forget you existed?" She finally turned to face me, the glass still in her hand. "I never lied," she said. "I just didn't tell you. There's a difference." "No, there isn't." My voice broke louder than I wanted. "There really, really isn't." She set the glass down and leaned on the counter. "You weren't supposed to find any of that. You think that makes it better?" "No, I think it makes it cleaner." The silence between us thickened like wet concrete. I wanted to scream, break something, break her, but I didn't. Because deep down, I was still that man she mocked, the one who folds when the wrong order shows up. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the photo again. "Who is he?" Her face twitched, just slightly. "His name was Callan. He died last year. You won't find anything about him. He lived his whole life off the grid." "And the child? Not mine anymore." That sentence knocked the wind out of me. "You don't get to say that," I whispered. You don't get to just erase. I had to, she interrupted, voice sharp now, because I was drowning in who I used to be. You were my clean start. You were never supposed to meet the ghost. That's when it hit me. I hadn't married Arlena, not really. I married the version of her that was desperate to bury the past. And I wasn't her husband. I was her alibi. The rest of that night blurred into fragments. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask her to leave. I just sat there, listening to her move through the apartment, humming to herself, as if we were just a normal couple riding out a quiet evening. At one point, she reheated the lasagna I made days ago, the one she walked out on, and set a plate in front of me. You should eat, she said softly, like I was the fragile one, like she wasn't the reason my reality was dissolving under my feet. I stared at it. Steam rose like a cruel joke. Garlic, cheese, betrayal. She ate in silence. I couldn't stop watching her. The same hands that had written that note, hidden that child, wired that money. They held a fork with casual elegance. I wanted to ask her who taught her how to separate lives so cleanly. But I already knew. Survival did. She hadn't fallen into this duality. She had built it. Why come back? I finally asked. She chewed slowly, swallowed. Because I wanted you to find it. Not at first, but eventually. I blinked. You wanted me to know? She nodded. You deserved the truth, but not the raw version. You'd have run. I needed you to get angry enough to stay. That sentence didn't make sense until it did. You think I'd stay to punish you? I asked. No, she said with terrifying calm. I think you'd stay to understand me. And that's when I realized something more horrifying than her lies. She didn't just need a clean start when she met me. She needed a witness. Someone to verify she wasn't the monster everyone else believed she was. Someone to look at her, knowing everything, and still sit across the table. That someone was me. My stomach turned. And then she reached under the table, slid something into my hand. A flash drive. She didn't explain it. Just said, if you want everything, all of it, this will give it to you. But once you open it, you'll never unknow what's on it. I stared at her, heart pounding. And if I don't? She leaned back in her chair. Then we finish dinner. And we forget tonight ever happened. My fingers clenched the drive. And in that moment, I honestly didn't know which scared me more. Seeing what was on it, or finding out that I already had enough. I sat there holding the flash drive like it was radioactive. The weight of it, not physical but emotional, pressed into my hand like a dare. It felt like everything I'd been through, every broken piece of our life, had distilled into that tiny plastic object. And I realized something right then. I didn't need to know. I already knew. I knew she had lived a life before me. I knew she had secrets stacked like bricks behind her eyes. I knew I wasn't her safe place. I was her clean slate. And I knew I didn't want to carry a truth that belonged to someone else's survival. So, I stood up, walked to the balcony, and without saying a word, I threw the flash drive into the alley behind our building. She didn't scream, didn't panic. She just sat still, watching me like I had just passed some invisible test she hadn't dared to give me out loud. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't drowning. We didn't stay together after that. But we didn't fall apart in flames either. She moved out a week later, left a note that said, "Thank you for not turning me into a villain," and I packed up the apartment with more peace than I ever thought possible. I didn't chase closure anymore, because sometimes peace doesn't come from knowing everything. Sometimes it comes from choosing what to let go of. Now, I live in a quiet corner of the city. I cook for myself even if it's just cereal sometimes. I water the plants she left behind. And I finally bought new mugs, ones that don't whisper memories every time I take a sip. Life moves on. So did I. And if you're listening to this, holding on to someone else's truth, wondering if you need every answer before you can move forward, maybe you don't. Maybe you just need the courage to not open the drive. Have you ever let go of a truth to protect your own peace? Or walked away from something you thought you needed to understand? Share a historical event that changed your view on forgiveness or truth in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories like this one. Only here on Reddit Confessions.